Just finished talking the NBA draft, winners and losers of the past NBA draft 2017. Now we're going to move on to the Minnesota Vikings. And I know a couple of people have asked, talk more Vikings, everything like that. I mean, we're talking about the last couple of weeks have been OTAs and rookie mini camps. And we're specifically, I don't feel like looking at a bunch of guys that got drafted in later rounds and undrafted free agents. No disrespect to them. I wish them all the best. But we're talking about guys that probably won't make the team and at best will make the practice squad. Okay, that's fine. But I don't really like to force topics out of thin air. That's not really what I like to do. But anyway, over the last week and a half, it's been announced that Randy Moss will be inducted into the Minnesota Vikings Ring of Honor, which I think is fantastic. Next, he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And he should also have his number retired, 84 retired. It's a little bit weird when I see like Cordell Patterson in the last year and years past, and I believe this new tight end we got, I don't know his name, I believe his name is Hodges, or is it Bucky Hodges or whatever his name is, wearing 84, because it's just weird. It's like, why are you doing that? That should be just that's like a sacred number that should just be up in the rafters, never to be worn again. I think it shouldn't be worn across the league, but it is what it is, but certainly not with the Vikings. But Randy Moss, to me, is the greatest wide receiver of all time, in just my opinion. Randy Moss is the reason that I'm a Vikings fan. I was born in D.C. I have no affiliation to Minnesota whatsoever. I was born in D.C., grew up in the PG County, Maryland area, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. We call it DMV out there. And all I knew before junior high school when it came to football was, general football I'd watch as a general casual fan. Okay, that's fine. But then outside of that, it was the Redskins and the Cowboys and that rivalry they had and still have up to this day. DC, man, the Redskins fans, they love when they play the Cowboys. But it's really all I knew. Then in junior high school, I started watching Randy Moss. I was like, all right, I'm a Vikings fan. Who is this guy? And then we had a coalition of Vikings fans in junior high school with some of my friends who were also Vikings fans. And then we would talk about, I'm going to moss you. I'm going to moss you. And in high school, we'd play pick up football. I'm going to moss you. Meaning we would use his name as a verb. And this wasn't just a DC thing. This was a nationwide thing as far as getting mossed. Meaning that no matter where the ball is thrown in my direction, I'm going to catch the ball. If I have to catch this ball off your neck, I'm going to do it. And there's nothing you can do about it. He made football so much more exciting. He's the reason that I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. But besides that, this dude in any era of football could play and still be dominant and still be the best receiver of all time. The way that I like to sum it up, we can look at stats and all that stuff, but the way that I sum it up is this. Whether you're in the red zone, whether you're 50 yards back, whether you need a first down, no matter what to move the chains, whatever, no matter what it is that you need from a wide receiver in any position, if you just have one chance at it, no matter what you need from a wide receiver, who are you going to rely on? To me, it's Randy Moss. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what defensive scheme you're facing, what team you're facing, or doesn't matter what blitz or package or whatever it is that you're showing. If you don't have a good offensive line, hell, just throw it up to Randy Moss. That's all you got to do. They say, what if they're showing you this and this and that? Throw it up to Randy Moss. That's all you got to do. You don't even need to just come up with some kick-ass routes up. Just throw it up in Randy's direction. And guess what? I like to compare him to like Kevin Durant or Steph Curry or Dirk Nowitzki in his prime, meaning that those guys in the NBA, Dirk Nowitzki, Steph Curry, and Kevin Durant, and maybe I'm missing a few people, and I do apologize for that if I'm missing a couple of people, but those people were in a class, those players are in a class of their own in the NBA, whereas they're some of the most surest shooters in NBA history, where basically when the ball leaves their hand towards the hoop, it's like, it's going in. And if it doesn't go in the hoop, you're shocked. It's like, wow, they really didn't make that shot. Same thing applies to Randy Moss. When you throw the ball up to Randy Moss, whenever you did that, especially in his prime, it was like, there's no way he's not catching this. He will find a way to catch the ball, and he will make circus catches and catches that you think are basically out of video games look routine for him. Same goes for Vince Carter, the greatest dunker of all time, where you're like, man, he's doing these great dunks. He would do dunks similar to what he would do in dunk contests in actual regulation games. I give the same credit to Randy Moss in that, man. And people say Jerry Rice, but you know what? To Randy Moss's credit, outside of Tom Brady for a couple of years, Randy Moss has never had that elite quarterback that Jerry Rice had for basically his entire career with Joe Montana and I believe Steve Young as well. I believe he played with him. He never had that elite quarterback for that long period of time that Jerry Rice had. And people say Terrell Owens, oh, look at all the stats. That's great too. But the one thing that separates Randy Moss from Terrell Owens is that Randy Moss had one of the greatest hands that I've ever seen, greatest speed, can leap, and great high point of the ball. Terrell Owens was a great receiver in his own right, one of the greatest of all time, and he should have been a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I'm going to talk on Bill Polian in a second, because if they do what they did to Terrell Owens to Randy Moss, I'm going to sound off. They should lose their Hall of Fame voting privileges. But what separated Randy Moss from Terrell Owens was Terrell Owens, if he burned a defensive back, he was more better for going across the middle and making challenging catches with guys on him. There was such a phrase called too wide open for Terrell Owens. If he was just wide open after burning a defensive back, let's say a cornerback fell and he was wide open, nobody within 15 yards of him, there was a good chance that Terrell Owens was going to drop that wide open Hail Mary bomb. That's what he did. Randy Moss wasn't going to do that. But when you're talking about Randy Moss and the different eras that he could have played in, like I said, this dude in any era of any league, oh, not any league, but any era, no matter what team, no matter what defense, no matter what it is, because everyone else, and Megatron is probably the closest thing to Randy Moss that I've seen now. Julio Jones, probably the same, where you just throw it up and they'll find a way to come down with it. But Randy Moss should have his number retired with the Minnesota Vikings. I think it's great. It's fantastic. I wish I could be there. Randy Moss is the greatest wide receiver of all time. Now getting to Bill Polian for a second. If they do what Bill Polian, by the way, for those that don't know, you probably do know, used to run the front office for the Indianapolis Colts. Now he's with ESPN. At least I believe he's still with ESPN. I don't know if he's still there after the massive layoffs they had a couple of months ago. But Bill Polian, I believe he has a Hall of Fame vote after Terrell Owens got snubbed out of the Hall of Fame this year. He'll eventually get in, but it's just ridiculous that he wasn't first ballot Hall of Famer. Bill Polian was front and center. And I'm paraphrasing, but basically he was a cancer in the locker room, and he just didn't make his teammates better, and he caused so much strife and all that stuff. That is absolutely ridiculous, because if they try that, it's one thing to disrespect Terrell Owens like that, and if you want to do that, okay. But it's a whole nother level of trying to do that to Randy Moss. Randy Moss changed the entire face of the NFL, changed the entire face of the NFL. And I called into 1500 ESPN Mackey and Judd show and talked about how, hey, you know, Randy Moss is the greatest receiver of all time. He's the reason that I'm a Vikings fan. And Judd Zolgad talked about how it's because of Randy Moss that teams like the Green Bay Packers started to look at drafting 6-foot cornerbacks because of guys like Randy Moss. And then I remember when the Minnesota Vikings traded away Randy Moss to the Oakland Raiders. They traded away Randy Moss to the Oakland Raiders because what? Oh my God, we couldn't control him, and what he did the fake mooning in Green Bay in that playoff game, and we just couldn't handle him, and we want culture and all that stuff. That is BS, man. The fact that they did, and if you're gonna trade away the greatest wide receiver of all time, the least you could do is say, okay, we'll get a king's ransom. Okay. No, you traded Randy Moss to the Oakland Raiders for Napoleon Harris, who, no disrespect, I'm sure he's a good guy, but he was nowhere close to the impact level of Randy Moss at the linebacker position. You also got a first-round pick, which turned out to be the number 7 pick from the Oakland Raiders to draft Troy freaking Williamson. Oh my God. The dude that could, who is not, I don't even know, look, I'm sure he's a good guy and all that good stuff, but I'm talking about on the field, Troy Williamson as a player. If you mention Troy Williamson to a Vikings fan, they will throw up on the spot. I'm surprised I haven't thrown up on this set right now, on this microphone. This is ridiculous because Troy Williamson could not, he had all the speed, he could run routes, he could do everything as a wide receiver but catch the damn football. Look up the YouTube highlight. Look up the YouTube highlight when it was the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Denver Broncos. I believe it was the end of the regular season finale. I believe this was at Denver. Threw a Hail Mary bomb up to Troy Williamson. There was no one within 15, 20 yards of this dude. Perfectly thrown ball by Tavares Jackson, and Troy Williamson dropped the damn ball and walked off just like, oh man, that's crazy, this is ridiculous. And Tavares Jackson was just like, are you kidding me? That's who we got for Randy Moss. Red McCone, the former owner of the Vikings, he should be ashamed of himself. Everybody that allowed that to happen should be ashamed of themselves, but I feel very good for Randy Moss. He deserves this. I hope he goes into the Hall of Fame as a Minnesota Viking. But if Bill Polian or you voters snub this dude Randy Moss, and as far as being a first ballot Hall of Famer, I believe actually this is the year where he coming up. He will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Eligibility is concerned. But anyway, Realistic Randy, Mediocre Best Podcast. Send us a tweet at realistic_Randy. We'll see you next week.